A Los Angeles sheriff is murdered.
You gotta be kidding me.
The list of suspects is off the charts.
We're talking about a cop who arrested some of the worst criminals in Los Angeles.
Investigators unravel the twisted case of a hero, his killer, and the mysterious link that seals their fates.
There's not too much that can shock me, but that certainly shocked me.
Los Angeles, California. It's just before 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. Deputy Sheriff George Arthur finishes his shift at the LA County Jail and heads for the freeway a mile away. Minutes later, as he enters the on-ramp, his van suddenly veers out of control and crashes into a concrete wall. Paramedics find the 37-year-old sheriff soaked in blood with massive head trauma. In the van, highway patrol officers find empty beer cans. Arthur's rushed to LA County Hospital, and 1 hour later, Deputy George Arthur is pronounced dead.
It's written up as a potential drunk driving, single fatality traffic accident.
Arthur's estranged wife, Linda, has been out of town with a boyfriend and is stunned when she learns the news. She also works for the sheriff's department and is joined in her grief by the entire force.
It was a very sad, very tragic moment. Anytime a police officer's killed, it's a tragic moment, but George just was such an iconic person on the department and was such a good supervisor and role model for us that we really felt a huge sense of loss.
But the possibility of George Arthur dying in a drunk driving accident doesn't square with his fellow officers, especially Sergeant Richard Valdemar.
I didn't think he was really drunk. I just couldn't see that.
Valdemar was Arthur's partner in the sheriff's elite gang unit. And in the 1980s, Los Angeles was a city under siege from violent street gangs. Arthur and Valdemar worked some of the most notorious drug-infested neighborhoods in and around East LA.
For a policeman to call someone a partner is a big deal. You become almost closer than your own family because you rely on them and you actually spend more time with your partner in a radio car than you do with your own family members.
George Arthur was a highly respected and decorated officer with 14 years on the force. In 1977, he was awarded the department's highest honor for bravery after fighting off an attack by armed gang members that nearly cost him his life. Now, the hero cop is dead. Within a few hours of the crash, his van is towed to an impound lot. The next day, Arthur's grieving brother-in-law collects the deputy's personal effects from the van.
They find some shell casings from bullets strewn about the interior of the van.
At first, no one finds this odd because Arthur is both a sheriff and a gun collector. Monday morning, 29 hours after the crash, the coroner expects to perform a routine autopsy on a drunk driving victim. Instead, what he finds is shocking.
As a matter of course, they run him through the fluoroscope machine for x-rays. And it's determined that he's got multiple gunshot wounds to the back of his head.
Someone had fired 4 shots point blank into George Arthur's brain. How was it possible that something so major had been missed?
Having been in many, many shootings, I can tell you that I've seen the most unusual gunshots that are not clearly visible. George had been in a crash, and so his head was covered with blood. It was a confusing scene, and somehow they missed the gunshot wound.
The drunk driving traffic fatality suddenly becomes a full-blown murder investigation. Police theorize that someone must have lain in wait inside the van, behind the front bucket seats. When Arthur realized someone was there, he may have crashed the van in order to dislodge his assailant.
For somebody to just lie in wait in his van and shoot him in the back of the head as he's getting ready to get on the freeway, what kind of coward does something like that?
Anyone who knew George and rode with him any length of time would know that George was going to resist. He would look for an opportunity And whatever it was, he was going to take advantage of the situation to try to disarm the person.
Forensic investigators immediately processed the van for evidence. There was a great deal of blood, and some of it is not Arthur's. When they examine the shattered windshield, they find clumps of blood and hair embedded in the cracks on the passenger side. Then, in a thorough search of the area around the crash site, forensics get a lucky break. They detect traces of blood running up and off the freeway ramp. Could this blood trail lead straight to the killer's front door?
And it stopped some 100 yards down the on-ramp, and then it appeared as though whoever was leaving that trail went up and through the bushes and up into the neighborhood nearby. Along the way, they found ammunition, and it was the same caliber that was in the van.
No gun is found, but samples from the blood trail, as well as blood found on the passenger side of the van, are taken back to the crime lab for testing.
Whoever was in that van, whoever came flying up through those captain's chairs, left their little signature on the inside of that windshield.
But in 1985, forensic testing is limited. All they can conclude is that the assailant's blood type is type A.
You got to put yourself back in 1985. There's no cell phones, there's no DNA. It's just old-fashioned, you know, footwork, pounding on doors, talking to people, trying to come up with some tidbit of information to solve a case.
Investigators go back to the blood trail, which leads to a gang-controlled district known as the Aliso Housing Projects. It's filled with potential suspects and very unreliable witnesses.
The problem was many of those people were gangs that we worked, and so they may not be forthcoming with the information. Police officer, especially a gang officer, dying could only be a good thing.
After extensive interviews with people in the housing project, officers get their first credible lead.
There was 2 eyewitnesses on the night of the murder that saw Raymond Cortez running away from George's van after the van crashed.
Raymond Cortez is a petty thief with numerous arrests for robbery and drugs.
You name it, he's done it or tried it and generally got caught for it.
When they talk to Cortez, he denies being anywhere near the crime scene. And since he's never shot anyone, he doesn't fit the profile of a cold-blooded assassin. But he is a member of the Primera Flats street gang, who have a powerful motive to take out a member of the gang task force. With 2 eyewitnesses IDing him at the scene, it seems to point to Cortez as the killer. Now they have to prove it with the blood trail. They just need to make a match. Coming up, was Arthur's murder a message from a ruthless crime family?
Maybe he stumbled on something nefarious going on in the jail, and they got rid of him, put an end to George.
While driving home after work, Deputy Sheriff George Arthur is shot repeatedly in the back of the head. Detectives zero in on a suspect, petty thief and gang member Raymond Cortez.
There was 2 eyewitnesses on the night of the murder that saw him. They knew him and saw him running away from George's van.
At the crash site, forensics collected what they believe is the killer's blood, which is type A. But when they analyze Cortez's blood, investigators are dumbfounded. It's not a match to the killer.
You were seen there. We have witnesses.
Frustrated detectives continue to grill Cortez, believing he must know something.
You're lying to us, Raymond.
I don't know, man.
He let out a couple of names. Those names were investigated. In fact, one of the names, we were never able to put a person to the name. He was in a cocaine stupor, and we were able to find out through other informants that it was not a reliable clue.
Then, to complicate matters, detectives interview a young couple who claim they saw a different man fleeing from inside George Arthur's van.
The front windshield of the van is kicked out from the inside, and they see a man come out through the windshield opening, come down over the hood, and stand dazed for a minute, and then run down into the darkness of the on-ramp to the 10 freeway.
The man they saw in the darkness was medium height with a mustache, but he had short hair. Could Cortez have had an accomplice, and was it his blood in the van? Unfortunately, the description isn't detailed enough for a useful composite. It's another lead that goes nowhere.
Detective Valimar.
Meanwhile, Arthur's colleagues at the sheriff's department start working an angle based on the theory that it was Arthur's success as a gang investigator that signed his death warrant.
He had worked most of his career in a high crime area. Multiple possibilities of people that would have an axe to grind with him and potentially want to kill him.
We're talking about a cop who had arrested some of the worst criminals in Los Angeles, so we all presumed that that's where the answer was going to lie, in the streets with gang members.
As the team questions every gang contact they can pin down, an ominous figure from George Arthur's past comes to light. Convicted cop killer and gang member Trinidad Trini Iglesias.
He was an individual who would purposely contact law enforcement in order to take away officers' guns and kill them.
Even more disturbing, Trini had made it publicly known that he had it in for the LA County sheriffs, and George Arthur in particular.
You know what, man? I'm gonna kill you, man. Next time I get you.
He believed that the sheriff's department had killed his brother. The brother was actually killed by the Mexican mafia. His wife committed suicide, and he blamed that on George specifically. And then his baby died, so he was convinced that the LA County Sheriff's Department, the gang unit, specifically was trying to kill his whole family.
At the time of the murder, Trini was in jail in Washington State, but that doesn't mean he didn't have a hand in the hit.
The specific individual doesn't have to be the one that kills you. You know, his homeboys, members of his gang, would all be willing to assist one of the older members of the gang, and especially if that member, as Trini was associated with the Mexican mafia.
The Mexican mafia is the most powerful gang in the California state prison system. Members carry out any and all orders, including taking a life.
Murder is one of their ways they establish themselves. They show how ruthless they are by killing somebody.
The mafia runs their multi-million-dollar national gang operation from inside prison walls.
They control the drugs, they control the gambling, anything that's a way to make a dollar illegally, they control within the prison walls. By controlling the inside of the prison, they control the outside criminal activity.
After questioning jailed gang members for weeks, Valdemar finally digs up an informant with the inside dirt he's been looking for.
He had heard on the row that the Mexican mafia had contracted out for the killing of a police officer, and he felt they were involved in George Arthur's killing.
But it's not clear why the mafia might want George Arthur dead.
I know where you live.
Was it due to the obsessive rage of Trini Iglesias? Or had Arthur uncovered something even more treacherous? After all, he had just been promoted to sergeant at the LA County Jail.
Every single gang that's in Los Angeles County was in that jail. Crips, Bloods, Hispanic gangs, white gangs, you name it. They were all there, all mixed together.
At the time, there was an internal investigation into how the Mexican mafia was smuggling large amounts of narcotics into the county jail.
When George first arrived at the jail, he called me, and he told me, wow, I didn't know that this was happening in the jail.
Well known as an aggressive and fearless cop, Arthur would have doggedly pursued any criminal activity he encountered.
Maybe he stumbled on something that was the answer to this narcotics flow into the jail, and they got rid of him so that it would not disrupt the business going on in the jail.
But when investigators pursue that angle, they come up empty-handed. There's no proof. Then lab tests come back, concluding that Trini's blood type doesn't match that found at the scene. and investigators can't find any evidence of someone doing the job for him. The theory of a gang hit is going nowhere fast.
There's no positive links that we could establish to say for sure or not that they were involved in the shooting of George. To do that, we would have to roll one of their own gang members to give us this information, and that's very difficult. Eventually, someone would talk, and so I was waiting for that day. It didn't come from anywhere where we expected to.
Coming up, just when he thinks he's free and clear, a key suspect trips up.
He was like the red flag to look at every time somebody opened this case file.
Since 1985, police have tracked down dozens of LA gang members, digging for leads in the shooting death of Deputy Sheriff George Arthur, but nothing sticks. And after 14 years, the case appears stone cold. Still, many of Arthur's colleagues refuse to give up.
There's no statute of limitations on murder, especially the murder of a deputy sheriff. Everybody who's significantly involved in George's life took it upon themselves a campaign, a crusade to try to uncover something that might lead to the identification of whoever did this.
Although the Los Angeles Police Department has jurisdiction over the homicide, Deputy Arthur had been employed by a different agency, the LA County Sheriff's Department. The fact that the police can't seem to nail the killer after years of investigation doesn't sit well with the sheriffs.
Sheriffs and police chiefs are talking, and command staff people are talking, and it's a sore spot.
Veteran LAPD homicide detective Dennis Kilcoyne is appointed head of a new task force in 1999. Its mission is to solve the Arthur case once and for all. To keep the peace between both branches of law enforcement, Kilcoyne and his partner, Paul Coulter, are teamed with 2 deputies from the LA County Sheriff's Department.
When I was assigned to this case, it was my first case. My partner was a very experienced investigator.
Starting from scratch, the team dives into the case files with fresh eyes.
What was done? Who were the witnesses that were interviewed? Are these witnesses still alive? Where are they now? I mean, you're going back years. You go back and you look at the evidence again.
It literally took 2.5, 3 weeks to read through the case file and absorb the case, if you will.
Their first task? Review the evidence against one of the lead suspects in the case, the gangbanger, Raymond Cortez, who was seen fleeing the crash site by 2 different eyewitnesses.
He was like the red flag to look at every time somebody opened this case file.
The new task force wants to talk to Cortez again, so they pay him a visit in a Washington state prison where he's doing time for robbery. Although Cortez continues to deny he was anywhere near George Arthur's van the night of the murder, he leaves the door open to serious questions.
He told us in the interview, look, it isn't the first time that a car has crashed there. I'm a thief by nature, and it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that I would run up to the crash scene and steal something out of the car. But he's a savvy criminal, and he wasn't going to confess to anything.
Cortez's story rings true to the investigators because that particular freeway on-ramp is a frequent crash site, providing some local residents with an irresistible opportunity.
People would come out of the projects, come up over the chain link fence, and go on a little feeding frenzy on the car. Wallets and purses and wristwatches and this type of thing would disappear, and before the people that were just in a crash even realize what happened, these parasites are back and gone into the projects.
To verify his claim that he wasn't there that night, detectives have Cortez take a polygraph test.
It came back that he was deceptive in the questions that were asked.
Nothing about Cortez's story is holding up. Investigators are convinced he was there that night. But to prove it, they need to match his blood with that found in the van. Back in '85, they were unable to match Cortez's blood type to the samples collected. Now, investigators will use newly available DNA testing to hopefully finally nail Cortez for this vicious crime. They pull the blood collected from the crime scene 14 years ago.
The blood samples were stored dried and frozen. However, there were very limited sample available because it was used during previous testing in 1985.
Cortez's blood is sent to the LAPD crime lab for DNA analysis. But again, there's no match, and this time it's conclusive.
The DNA, they tell us, doesn't lie, so he's been ruled out. He was guilty of a lot of things, but not this crime.
So what about the witnesses who claim to have seen Cortez at the crash site that night?
We theorized that he probably ran up to the vehicle, stole some out of it, and ran back into the projects, and that's what the witnesses saw when they saw Raymond Cortez.
The second try at Raymond Cortez yields nothing. It's yet another crushing blow for the Sheriff's Department and the LAPD. The task force has got to come at the murder from a different angle. So they go back to basics, re-examining the people closest to George Arthur, starting with his estranged wife.
Where were you on the night that he was killed?
When Linda Arthur was first interviewed in 1985, she was never considered a suspect.
At the time, we were grieving for the widow of our friend. We're not likely to look at her as anything except the poor victim of some mindless gang member's violence.
And when Arthur was murdered, Linda had an unshakable alibi. She was on vacation with a boyfriend in Monterey, California. But now, with the pool of suspects dried up, police take a closer look at the widow and the unique relationship she had with her husband.
Law enforcement, they're no different than anybody else. They have love lives, they have financial problems. Just because they're law enforcement, you don't know what they're into, and that's something that we had to look at.
George and I had an understanding.
Coming up, George Arthur's love life was complicated, but could it also have been lethal?
George was a player, a ladies' man. He was a handsome guy, and he had a way with women. They all liked George.
An elite task force has been stymied in their search for hard evidence to link any viable suspect to the cold-blooded murder of Deputy Sheriff George Arthur. Since theories about possible gang involvement have gotten them nowhere, it's time to get personal. That starts with a close look at the deputy's failing marriage to fellow Sheriff Linda Arthur.
You know, this life we lived was hard on anybody's marriage. We were never home. Policemen were getting divorced like every other day. Several policemen were married 4 or 5 times. That's just the marriages, not the relationships.
At the time of Arthur's death, the couple had been separated for more than a year and filed for divorce, but nothing had been finalized. Is it possible that Arthur was standing in the way of the divorce, providing a motive for Linda to want him out of the picture? But as detectives probe deeper, they can't find any hostility in that relationship.
They were very, very close. They lived in different residences. They just couldn't live under the same roof.
What we did know was that they were dating other people. We didn't see a lot of disharmony. It looked like a good relationship.
What about the people she and George were dating, many of whom were colleagues?
George was a player, a ladies' man. He was a handsome guy, and he had a way with women. Even, you know, in the field, the victims of crimes, the witnesses, they all liked George.
Linda provides names of some of the women her husband had been involved with, as well as men Linda had dated.
She was very open and candid, and we spent, probably an hour, hour and a half with her. As best as she could remember, she rattles off a list of people that she had dated or gone to barbecues with.
Armed with a list of love interests for both Linda and George, the team now wrestles with how to approach these potential suspects, especially those who are still active deputy sheriffs.
Detective McCarthy and his partner, they're going to be our love detectives. Anybody and everybody that George or Linda had an interest in, a relationship with, or even flirted with, they're going to get a DNA sample.
Thanks for your help. Okay, appreciate it.
One of the names on the love list was a sheriff's deputy Linda had dated for a short time. He sparks their attention when the man's wife reveals something he'd said.
He had made comments that if George was out of the picture, things would be a lot better. It's very hard to believe a cop would kill another cop. However, you can't close your mind to it because it is a possibility.
Then the love detectives learned from witnesses that the deputy and George Arthur recently had an angry confrontation, most likely about Linda.
It was believed that, that George found out about it, and there was still feelings between George and Linda, and that this was just very, very detrimental, which led to George's death.
The investigators locate the deputy, who is still serving in the sheriff's department.
He confirmed that he did date Linda. He confirmed a minor verbal altercation with George, but nothing serious.
To back up his statement with genetic proof, he volunteers a DNA sample.
We knew it was going to be DNA that put your suspect in that van because George was shot in the back of the head, and that little sample on the windshield would not have been consistent with being George's. That is going to be your confirming piece of evidence right there.
The results come back, and the deputy is not a DNA match. He's cleared from suspicion, but not before the damage is done to his reputation.
It was thought, and thought hard, that this was the answer, to the point where the investigation brutally focused on this man and his wife. Their careers and lives were severely disrupted, if not ruined, over it.
Internal pressure mounts as investigators struggle to avoid targeting any more innocent law enforcement personnel. But they have to keep hunting for the killer.
You were hired around the same time, right?
They decide the best way to proceed is to have the two LA County sheriffs on this new task force work the angle as quietly as possible. But it's no easy task asking their fellow deputies to hand over a DNA sample.
To go to them.
Every time the lab tried to match a blood sample, more of the precious evidence from 1985 was consumed. Very soon, investigators realize they could run out of blood before they run out of suspects.
You've got blood drops, just very small pieces of evidence. Each time somebody comes up on your radar as a potential suspect, they have to take a piece of that evidence and do a comparison with your potential suspect. So little by little, your evidence is shrinking and slowly disappearing before your eyes.
We were getting down to the end there on that sample from the windshield to put anybody in that van.
Working their way down the love list, the team stops on a retired deputy no longer living in Los Angeles. DNA gets closer. Kirby stops returning investigators' calls. And the day before the team leaves for Spokane, they get even more disturbing news.
My phone rang. It was an attorney from Spokane who said that she had been retained by Ted Kirby.
And we're thinking, lawyer, what's this about? I mean, and there's the biggest red flag of all. It's just, okay, this guy's got something to hide.
Coming up, just as detectives are about to solve the mystery of who killed George Arthur, the unthinkable happens.
There's not too much that can shock me, but that certainly shocked me.
14 years after Deputy Sheriff George Arthur is gunned down in his own van, the task force of LA sheriffs and the LAPD get troubling signs that a retired sheriff, one of their own, may know something about this case.
And what makes you believe that?
We started to get excited when he threw up the red flag with the lawyer, and that was, but you're not really sure. I mean, there could be a lot of things going on in somebody's life where they don't want to talk to cops, and even if you used to be one.
Now investigators not only want Ted Kirby's DNA, They want answers. They head to Spokane, Washington to meet with him in person.
Our intention is to go up and force a DNA sample from Kirby. When we get there, the local authorities, they said that they won't allow us to do this. The bar is higher up there for probable cause. And I look at my people and I said, no. I said, you guys just check into the hotel and we're going to sit down and we're going to go over this thing.
The only way to get a warrant for Kirby's DNA is to convince a Washington state judge of probable cause. But first, they need more information from George Arthur's widow.
Now we start drilling Linda specifically about Ted Kirby.
She said that, look, Ted Kirby was a person that I dated. It wasn't a serious dating relationship, in my opinion, but clearly he was more serious about the relationship than I was.
When she tried to brush him off, Kirby's reaction rattled her.
He'd be driving by her house at night. She recognized the sound of his car. So he's stalking her is what he's doing.
Linda had shared this information with the first team of investigators in 1985.
He got a little too obsessive.
But back then, it just didn't compute.
Nobody, including Linda, can even begin to put their mind around another deputy sheriff harming George.
The fact that Kirby stalked Linda allows investigators to obtain a warrant. They head to the home Kirby shares with his third wife on a quiet street.
I'm Detective Coulter. We have a warrant for your DNA.
For the first time, investigators get a close look at the retired officer and find themselves staring at what seems to be a damning piece of evidence.
You can still see a linear scar across the forehead, and your gut feeling is, this is our guy.
They collect his DNA sample and take him to the local police station for questioning.
I said, Ted, I work for LAPD. I'm not from the sheriff's department. And if you're pissed off that, you didn't get enough people come to your retirement barbecue or something like that, you better start talking to me, buddy, because this thing's snowballing and it's coming right down your driveway.
Call my lawyer and talk to him.
He just keeps repeating to me with his head down, I can't talk to you. My attorney tells me not to talk to you. He's shaking, he's trembling.
Like a beaten dog, he wouldn't look at you. His demeanor spoke volumes.
The team returns to Los Angeles and submits Kirby's saliva sample for DNA testing. 6 days later, they get their answer.
They tell us it's him. They've got a match.
The DNA came back. It's him on the blood trail on the east side of the freeway. However, that does not put Ted Kirby inside the van. We want him in the van.
But there's a big problem. The blood sample from inside the van has been entirely used up in testing previous suspects. Their only hope? A slight stain of blood on the paper that was used to wrap the sample. It might just be enough to conduct one last test. Still, to be completely buttoned up before arresting a fellow officer for first-degree murder, investigators need Kirby's blood. To make sure they have no trouble getting a warrant this time, the team has gathered more incriminating evidence from 1985 pertaining to the scar they saw on Kirby's forehead.
We obtain medical records that he's at Queen of the Valleys Hospital out in Covina, just east of downtown. And within an hour or so after the murder, he's getting his forehead stitched up.
The medical records state that Kirby told doctors he had fallen off a bicycle and hit his head and left arm on the pavement.
The injuries were all consistent with injuries that he would have sustained in that collision and hitting the windshield with his head.
For the next 10 working days, he took sick time. And that was major red flag stuff.
That's pretty dynamic evidence. That pushed us over the edge to get our warrants.
But when investigators return to Kirby's home in Spokane, they find his wife alone and very distressed.
I haven't spoken to him in a while.
She said that Ted went on a drinking binge. She just turned into somebody she didn't even recognize. One morning she woke up, his wallet and his wedding ring and everything were laid out neatly on the top of their dresser, and the drape was flapping in the open slider door.
I haven't seen him since.
And how long ago was that?
2 weeks.
Ted Kirby is now officially a missing fugitive. Has he made a run for the Canadian border or chosen a darker way out?
I turned to our local detectives there and I said, well, could we organize a search and maybe search and rescue? We can get some people out here and start searching the area. And they said, absolutely not. You don't have a warrant to go on that property and you're not in California anymore. Okay, that was a tough pill to swallow.
The frustrated team returns to LA and shares the devastating news that they believe retired Sheriff Ted Kirby is George Arthur's killer.
There's not too much that can shock me, but that certainly shocked me.
To find out it was another fellow deputy sheriff who worked the jails with Sergeant Arthur and his reasoning for doing it, you gotta be kidding me.
That reason, as far as investigators could determine, was Kirby's obsession with Linda Arthur.
Ted actually had left his second wife with the intention of pursuing the relationship with Linda.
Whether he thought maybe George was in the way of him and Linda, or, who knows? Who knows why?
It's the million-dollar question they can't wait to ask Kirby, if and when he's caught. Then, just 6 days after their trip to Spokane, investigators find out where Kirby is, thanks to a local news crew trespassing on Kirby's property.
They came out and went under the barbed wire and walked 50 feet into the field behind the first big rock, and there's old Ted.
His decomposing body has been lying there for almost 2 weeks. Forensic evidence quickly reveals that he shot himself. It comes as no surprise to the task force.
Can you imagine what's going through his mind, thinking he's going to be brought back to Los Angeles and now he's going to be locked up in the same place that he used to be a guard at? That he's going to see George's buddies? He just took the easy way out. Why face all of that?
Within a week of discovering Kirby's body, the DNA results of his blood test are reported.
And it came back 1 in 87 billion, which there's not 87 billion people on the face of the earth. So it was indisputable that Ted Kirby was certainly inside that van.
George Arthur's colleagues try to piece together Kirby's actions that night in June, 14 years ago.
He hid behind the curtain at a given point while George is distracted driving. He comes out from behind the curtain, and then George takes evasive action, crashes the van. Once the fight began in the van, I don't think there could be any other conclusion except that one of them was going to get killed.
By villages, children who reminded me of myself at 12. They carried tools instead of rifles, but their eyes had the same emptiness. One day, I caught one of them pocketing a handful of the project's seeds. I almost shouted, but then I saw the desperation in his face. He whispered, "For my mother's grave," and I let him go. Later that night, I stared at my reflection in a bucket of water, and for the first time, I saw the faint smile of someone who had forgotten why he began. The men above me wanted faster results. They said the donors were watching, that reports must look successful. They pushed for irrigation, for fertilizers, for contracts. Paper replaced patience. I signed documents I didn't understand, watched money flow like water into hands that never touched soil. And then came the drought, again. Our pipes cracked before they ever carried a drop. The wells ran dry. The new trees, weak from chemicals, shriveled within weeks. The officials blamed the weather. The workers, fate. They packed their cars and drove away, leaving me with miles of dead saplings and boys who looked at me like I'd betrayed them. I stayed. I couldn't leave. Not when my grove still stood at the edge of the project, the only green that refused to die. One night, as the wind carried the scent of dust and loss, I walked through the rows of dying trees. Each one seemed to lean toward me like an accusation. I whispered to them. I tried. The leaves didn't move. Silence is heavier than any verdict.
Weeks passed. The villagers began to lose faith in me. Some said the project had been cursed, that planting for money instead of memory angered the dead. A woman spat at my feet. This land was holy, she said. Now it's just numbers. I wanted to shout back, to explain that I was trying to help, but my throat was dry, not from thirst, but from shame. That night, I walked to my oldest grove, the one with the names, the one that still lived. I knelt beside the first tree I'd ever planted, the one for the man I killed when I was 12. Its branches were strong, its roots deep. I pressed my forehead against the trunk and whispered. I did it again. I killed what I meant to save. The wind answered by carrying dust into my eyes, and for a moment I couldn't tell if I was crying or just blind. The next morning, I gathered the surviving workers, the boys who hadn't left. I told them to bring whatever water they had left. We walked together, bucket by bucket, pouring what little we had over the oldest grove. The ground drank it slowly, like someone learning to trust again. A child looked up at me and asked, "Why save these ones and not the others?" I said, "Because these remember." He frowned, not understanding, but maybe one day he will. When the sun set that evening, the trees cast long shadows that touched the edges of the failed project. For the first time, I saw something sacred in the way ruin meets life, how guilt can water what pride destroys. Still, temptation lingered. The government sent word that they wanted to restart the project under new leadership. They asked me to return. Double pay, new trucks, full authority. They said the people trusted me, that I could lead them out of despair. I read the letter 3 times. The paper smelled of ink and promise, but also of the same arrogance that once burned villages. That night, I burned the letter in silence. The flames rose high, and for a moment, I saw the reflection of my younger self in them. A boy holding a rifle, believing he was saving the world. Maybe we never stopped fighting the wars we survived. They just changed their uniforms. They came back with a different offer. Not a letter, a convoy, white trucks, logos, clean shirts. They shook my hand like I was a gate they needed to pass through.